Here we are live.
Here we are.
Hello, Katie Holly. Welcome. Welcome, Therese. So good to
Hey,
see
Therese. Yeah.
you. To see familiar faces already. Yeah, so we're
Oh,
doing an office hour with Seth, and it's so lovely to see you all. So,
we
yeah,
were planning just to have a conversation between the two of us. This is wonderful. Hi, Lior. I love your writing if I don't comment or engage enough.
hi, Therese. Yeah, so we have these office hours. Seth and I both within Amuna, our like online community learning platform, every month. But we wanted to break out and bring it into Substack a little bit and kind of experiment with this format. Um, and yeah, I have some questions that I want to ask Seth to kind of develop some of the storytelling and the thinking that we're both cultivating right now about something that we're really excited about, the Edge, that we've been putting together with a lot of love and devotion for 5 years, and then especially for the last couple of weeks, with incredible precision. So I'm really excited to dive into those questions and just be in a dialogue with Seth. But we really, really, really want to hear from you all. So if any of you have any questions that Seth's writing has brought up for you, anything that it's sparked for you that you'd like to discuss, or a practical application in your own life, anything at all, you're really welcome to write it in the chat. Or we've never done this part before, but I think that you can request to join the live and you can be a part of it.
Love that.
So yeah.
We're just sitting around a circle with all y'all, and we want to invite as many of you into our circle as possible.
And we're home. We're like a
We're
hallway.
just a hallway apart.
And we always say that how we want it to feel with Amuna, with everything that we do and teach online. We really want it to feel like welcoming people into our home. And we love the conversations that people have when they come around our kitchen table. They always leave with books and things that they can apply into their lives. So we want that to be the feeling that you all have from being on this live, whether you're here with us right now or watching the replay.
Yeah, we love recommending books to people.
Yeah. Yeah. So, okay. So, I will just drop in with my first question. And again, I'll reiterate as we go that anyone else's questions are welcome. Welcome to take your time. We're going to be here for about an hour. And yeah, so my first question is about your experience, Seth, both for over a decade before you met me, as well as some overlap in the early years of our relationship. You were working with really amazing, amazing people and you still are working with amazing people at the top of their field, whatever it was. And it started with professional athletes. Then it kind of expanded to Fortune 100 CEOs, some people who I know about because I'm your wife, but who are have really affected the world in some major, major ways, some for better and some for worse. But massive power, massive success, massive influence, and a lot of them having lives that I think a lot of people fantasize about. And you had a very inside understanding of people's lives. A lot of people didn't necessarily go to therapy, and even if they did, they were seeing you 3 times a week instead of just once a week or however frequent.
A lot of wealthy people, therapy is just being told what they want to hear to feel better about themselves, and or saying what needs to be said to get the script written in that circumstances.
Yeah, but
But
they're hiring you to challenge them, push them, and to help them really, really achieve their goals. And they opened up to you about a lot of things in their life that my understanding is that you have been a trusted person in so many people's lives that that has given you a real insight um into what's missing in a lot of people's lives who seem to have absolutely everything. And that's what I'd love for you to share about today.
yeah, well, I'll share a quick little story about that. But I think it might be more helpful to kind of zoom out to kind of how I got there. I think is an important part of the equation. So since we're just in a spacious circle, I'll do some storytelling. But to your specific question, yes, I've been in many billionaires' homes. I've been greeted by the butler, and as I've been doing at the time in home personal training for them, have been offered, high end beverages and all sorts of things. It's another world. And I can't tell you, every single time I'd walk out of one of those homes, I would just look up at the sky and the trees and the grass, and I would just be so grateful to be connected to nature and to be connected to the living world. And even like I hadn't met you yet, whose whole kind of brand is the living world. But truly, like in my core, I'd walk out of there just like, "Bleh. I'm so happy to be connected to something bigger than myself." And and don't get me wrong, they're some of the most kindest, beautiful people that I've ever met. But at the same time, and I think what you're trying to get to is, don't let uh, wealth or having things be an illusion that equals happiness, because it doesn't. And again, I'm just fortunate to be firsthand in the living rooms in those conversations, to hear and know that. And to something else you expressed, when I was working in that capacity, you're in people's homes 2, 3, 4 times a week, exercising them, getting to deep vulnerable shares. And they say that, like, my hairstylist or the bartender gets all the secrets. So truly I did. And like I said, I want to zoom out a little bit, because I do want to give a little bit of a backstory to how I got into those living rooms. So I've always I grew up in like a very sports centric world. The way I connect to my family involved sports and coaches. I mean, I have my all the squares in my bookcase is like a different chapter of my life, and right over there I have all of my John Wooden, Greg Schiano, Vince Lombardi, like very much in that excellence world and striving for excellence. And we could unpack that, in a bunch of different ways. But either way, I always strived for excellence. I always had the mentality that I could do anything I wanted to do if I could put my mind to it. And I really believed that until I was like 14, and I realized, like, I'm never going to be tall enough or have the athleticism to be in the NBA. So no matter how hard I train, no matter how all the things, like, there was a level of a limit, but I knew I wanted to be connected deeply to that world. So long story short, I got my master's in exercise physiology to become a strength and conditioning coach, because I felt like if I couldn't get to that level, I want to be like side by side helping that person become the best version of themselves. And you know this about me, I've written about this before, but in my journal as a 22-year-old, I wrote down, I just want to help people become the best versions of themselves. I didn't, or I didn't at the time know how to do that, but I was very clear at a very young age that I wanted to do that for people. And and that's evolved over the last 20 years into what we're now really here talking about with multidimensional coaching and the edge. But at the time, the only access point I had to helping people live a life of excellence was through their bodies. And there's a whole other, and I've written about this on Substack, but I was always an athlete, but on the smaller, skinnier side. My sophomore year soccer doctor for my physical said, if you were playing any other sport, I don't know if I'd sign off, because I was so skinny and frail. So that set something off in me of like, I got to be muscular and big, yada, yada. So then the obvious track was strength and conditioning coach. And I started working with, as you said earlier, with professional athletes. My first person I ever worked with one-on-one with is now in the Major League Baseball Hall of Fame. So right away, I was working at a top-notch facility in South Florida with Major League Baseball, NFL, NCAA, NHL, yada, yada. And I realized really quickly, it's actually easy to help somebody improve their 40-yard dash, to improve their vertical jump. They also had corporate wellness there. So it was joyful for me to help people, lose 20 pounds, feel a little bit more confident in their body as they're getting ready for an event. But what I realized is they were not happier after they reached the physical goal. And I can't tell you how many times I help somebody, reach a goal weight only for them to end up more depressed or let down than before they started. So they thought, well, if I could just get back to a healthy weight or the weight I was in high school, things would be better again. And there's this illusion in the in the health and well-being world, in the fitness world, that losing weight's going to equal happiness. That is so far from the truth. Because and what I experienced so many times firsthand is that person that like works out really hard and diets really hard and gets to a goal weight, and then they're like, what do I do now? What do I do? Like, I got here and everything's still the same, and I still have to work out and eat well to maintain this. So, and this is like a fuller backstory than maybe you wanted, Ganga, but right at that moment, very, very, very early in my career, 20 years ago, I realized there's so much more to helping people excel than just changing their physical body. And that was because I needed continuing education credits for my strength and conditioning background. I dove headfirst into the world of yoga, meditation, life coaching, which is a whole nother spiel. But I was actually able to become the first national strength and conditioning coach and Yoga Alliance yoga meditation trainer, facilitator, what have you.
You're
Um,
the first person to overlap those two.
those two backgrounds, and that definitely helped like the career at that time. And when I went and again I was now weaving in mind, body, spirit. I was now weaving in all of those worlds. And as you know, when we first met was right at the peak of that part of my career. So I still had I owned a brick and mortar personal training spin yoga business. I met Ganga on New Year's Eve, and the first week of January I flew to New Jersey, where I taught the Rutgers football strength and conditioning coach, yoga and meditation, which like in my family is just like my dad's bucket list moment for me. And then I flew from New Jersey to San Francisco, where I was so fortunate to get to teach at Yoga Journal Live conference. And I just met Ganga Devi, and her backstory is a whole nother Substack Live that we'll have. But it was so obvious to me at the Yoga Journal Live that on a lot of levels, I thought I reached like a certain pinnacle of that part of my career, only to get there and realize the waters were so shallow, to say the least. And because of my background in like strength and conditioning coaching, I've been to a lot of fitness conferences, a lot of nutrition conferences. So to be at the Yoga Journal Live event, it felt like a group fitness convention. There's no depth, there's no soul, and don't get me wrong, beautiful people and lifelong friends. But I knew there was more, and that was when I just met Ganga. People started kind of coming to us for spiritual counseling, and it was very clear to us that we wanted like more depth. So Ganga and I together we did a 2-year interspiritual seminary. And I know I'm giving maybe more backstory than you wanted, Ganga, and I'll wrap it up. But yeah, why don't you finish the backstory, babe?
Well, no, yeah, there's this is like a really key piece that I've been thinking about lately as I've been reflecting on like what has been the process that brought us to where we are right now. Um, which is that, we met the New Year's Eve between 2016 and 2017. And I remember that so vividly because we met in West Palm Beach, just like spitting distance, like just across the bridge from Mar-a-Lago. And it was, we were about to enter into 2017, the year of the first Trump presidency beginning. And I was very, very nervous about what that would mean for the world. So there's like this like vividness of like also like the prayer that I held for myself going into the new year. Like when I asked you your intention, it was the first conversation we ever had when we met, was asking your intention for the new year. And it was to be love. And I was like, whoa, this guy gets it. This is amazing. Like it really impacted me. Obviously I'm married to you now. And my prayer for the year was to learn how to be really effective in the change that I want to make in the world. And I love that our lives have really come together with the intersection of those two forces and those two core motivations. And then as that year unfolded with the Women's March happening around the time of like what our like third date, when you came back from that trip, to then, the Me Too movement really picking up steam, I've been really reflecting on how you and I both like I don't think that we were surprised to know that there was a lot of shadow and harm that was happening in worlds that we were connected to. Because like every industry was affected by Me Too, rightfully so, like the things that are happening under the surface coming up. But you and I both, yeah, again, I don't think that we were surprised, but I think we were very alarmed by just how pervasive these shadows are and how easy it seems that that people who are entrusted, like trusted by other people to guide them spiritually, professionally, in their health and wellness journey, all of this stuff, how easy it is for that dynamic to turn toxic, abusive, and harmful. And I remember you having conversations with other men around that time who were like freaking out about Me Too because it was revealing to them things that they thought were normal that they were doing that were actually really harmful. And there were men who were saying to you, like, I'm worried about, like, I don't know if I like that they were feeling kind of frozen when it came to dating and hooking up with people because they didn't know if they were going to be causing harm. And I remember you being like, you don't know if you're assaulting someone, like you need to, there's some foundational work that you need to do to really be sure that you are having an experience that both of you are really happy about. And why are we going on autopilot to do this? And I remember so much insight coming from you because of things that you knew about the inner life of your clients that also helped us both understand power in a more nuanced way, and corruption. And I feel that and I think that that was a huge motivating factor for us in enrolling in interspiritual seminary, because people were, as you said, people were coming to us for spiritual guidance, both of us in different ways. Um, and we were both like, hold on a second. I don't want to be a guru. Like, I don't want to be in a position where somebody's giving their power away to me. And I might somehow end up on this slippery slope of corruption and abuse, because we were so really aware of how pervasive it was. So that was a huge motivating factor for us both in the next year enrolling in interspiritual seminary together. And I remember in both of our applications, we wrote like why we were applying, and it was because we were motivated by spiritual maturity. We wanted to cultivate the kind of maturity that made us truly trustworthy. Um, and by trustworthy, I mean worthy of the trust that people were already inclined to put in us. And I think that that's one of the core issues in spiritual guidance and so many different things, is that like I think people are longing for someone that they can trust, that can give them support and guidance. And we do not live in a world that cultivates trustworthy people. Like in one of my recent things that I wrote, talking about the incentive structures of our world, quoting Daniel Schmachtenberger, something he said to me years ago was, that we live in a world that incentivizes sociopathic and narcissistic behavior. And so you and I have really spent the bulk of our entire relationship, of the nearly 9 years that we've been together,
It's funny.
really, really change our incentive structures and be very, very clear about what is motivating us to grow. And I just want to say that you were at like an incredible career high when we met, and you had like a huge following on Instagram. You had like so many things going for you, and you really withdrew. You really took a
I
step
did a
back
complete 180. Yeah.
to really make sure that you were coming from the right place all the way through. Respect that so much. That's why I married you.
Here we are.
Here we are.
Well,
And I just want to any responses that you have, but welcome to anybody who's joined. We're schmoozing. We have an office hour. I have some questions that I am excited to be asking Seth, but if you have any questions for Seth, anything that his writing or anything he said today uh, has brought up, any questions about applying things that you've learned from his writing, or anything at all that you want to ask him or us together, we're here having a semi-structured conversation, and you're very welcome to join. You can hear, or you can raise your hand and request to join in. We've never done that before, but we can figure it out together. And
we're learning together. Well, two reflections from what you shared are one of them is like over the course of my career, I've left so much money on the table for not being like, this is the one you need, this is the way. Because from a very, very early place in my career, I realized everybody is different. Everybody has a unique backstory. Everybody has unique present moment. Everybody has a unique future and vision they're moving into. And what works for one person might not work for another person. So I always, always, always try to empower people to make the decision that's best for their body. But you'd be shocked how many people are like, just tell me what to do. Just tell me what to do and I'll do it. So that was actually a huge learning curve for me and
And people
really
want away.
was that.
I think people want to give their power away. They just
Yeah, and as you know, as we know, like a lot of people just need like a strong daddy to tell them everything's okay and they're going to be okay. But as you know, we've developed our entire like our entire ecosystem is kind of counterbalancing that by empowering people with like here are the best options for you and now do what's best for you. And it's really important to know that you might just do one of these things for a few weeks or a few months and then do another thing. Like, so this, the, it's our world is not gray. It's rainbow, unicolor. And we want to empower people to do what's best for their bodies, understanding that there are ebbs and flows. And we could get into like stabilizing, expanded periodization, all that stuff. The other thing that was coming up for me when you were talking about the Me Too movement, and I was just talking to old friend of mine from when I was like heavy in my yoga teaching world, and I was just reflecting that in my during my master's degree, so we had so many classes about like HIPAA and how to touch people appropriately or not touch people appropriately. So like it was ingrained in me so early on in my education. You never put your hand on another human being without asking for permission first. And that this is from like the meatiest meathead of strength and conditioning laboratories. So then I became a yoga instructor, like just when I graduated with my master's, and I'm watching the yoga space, and I'm watching untrained individuals, men and women, putting their hands on people's bodies so inappropriately. The
and
cringe.
giving adjustments that don't actually make sense
No,
and that are not bio.
biomechanically, 90% of what I see in yoga studios and gyms do not make sense, period. And I'm happy to give anybody a evaluation of their routines or an audit of what they do, but I'm not exaggerating. 90% of what I see in yoga, Pilates, gyms with personal trainers are radically dangerous and unbiomechanically sound. But either way, combining it with like the Me Too and everything you're talking about, it's just like radically early. I would get feedback from people like, oh my God, I've been practicing yoga for so long. I've never had anybody, let alone a man, ask for permission to put their hand on my shoulder, my back, my whatever. And the depth of that ask unlocked so much in people that thread became an incredible curiosity of mine that I wanted to understand more and more and more, which just led us right into our seminary training, which was incredibly trauma informed, which really, again, like because my master's in physiology, so much of what I'd be learning and all of my other trainings after that, I'd run it through this like physiological lens, and it all really started to blossom again into our work now, which is incredibly trauma informed, somatic aware, understanding how everything affects our body, and again just like dropping into the unconscious of how we hold so much in our bodies. But please, Ganga, take the reins back. And
Yeah. Well, welcome to those who just joined. Feel very welcome if you have any questions that you'd like to ask Seth,
we're
or
we're just schmoozing.
uh, feel welcome to and you're welcome to jump on the live as well if you'd like to. We can figure that out together. Um, gosh, yeah, I what you're saying about in the yoga world, it's funny. It's what it's bringing up for me is actually a conversation that I felt like I had to navigate a lot throughout my life and beginning in college, which was people like hearing that I was born and raised on an ashram and assuming that I practiced yoga, like that kind of yoga, like pop culture yoga. Um, and I'm like, and it's funny. I mean, I married you, but I have been the least athletic person I've known my entire life. The least
Ganga thought she was allergic to exercise when we first met, and the jury's still out in a lot of ways.
exercise really has I it puts me it triggers a trauma response for me. It
Yeah.
triggers a high like a high aroused trauma response, and then I crash into hypo aroused,
And
and it's
just so anybody, and we're the goal here wasn't to talk about like my exercise science world, but it's just so easy for me to talk about. What Ganga is describing is incredibly prevalent in our culture and is just, it is not talked about, period. And what that is that physiological, the acute physiological effects of exercise can cause a trauma reaction in a lot of people.
yeah. Yeah. Yeah, and just to the simple example is like if I'm sweating and breathing heavily and exerting myself, a part of me thinks that it's that I'm gonna die. Um, and, uh, and and I do have, like, chronic health issues that then do trigger, like, post-exertion malaise, so I really do feel like I'm, like, deeply collapsing, but anyway, you know, I I grew up on an ashram that did have a yoga program, but it wasn't central to the teaching and the practice of the ashram. And I wasn't like super in the yoga world, not nearly as much as you. So it was really interesting to get to know one another, and that was a world that you were really growing in your amazing reputation, and doing incredible work, for like a
But also, I was very like masculine,
yeah, it was
a very masculine present of like way bigger beard than now and tattoos and more muscular. But then I taught like the gentlest of gentle style of yoga that really threw people for a loop. But that was all part of the method.
yeah, well, and even that's also was present in your work with professional athletes. I remember like when you sharing with me that early on um in your time working at that facility, you were at first always working under the supervision of higher coaches, and then there was one event where like you took the lead, like you weren't
Well,
working
that
under.
was the day that changed my life.
Yeah,
The facility with the athletes, you had to put a persona on, and so much of our work now talks about, you know, depth psychology and the different masks we wear. But when I was in that facility, and even when I talk about it now, almost 20 years later, like I feel like I start talking like that coach bro again. But there was that persona that you had to put on, and you're working with millionaires whose body is their avenue to make money. So the delicacy was incredibly important. So yes, early on, I worked one on one with the athletes, but I did what the head coach wrote out to do. And after working there for a few months, it was a Sunday. It was college and high school athletes, and I was running the show. And full radical transparency, I was in my early 20s, and I might have been uh, slightly hungover that morning. Um, and I was just like, I'm not going to wear that mask today. I'm going to wear this mask and I'm going to be me and I'm going to have fun and we're going to work hard. And we had a really great afternoon. And afterwards, all the athletes were like, man, if you treated us like that every day, we'd run through walls for you. This other like tough guy persona thing, like just turns us off. And it was at that moment that I decided, like, I'm just going to be authentically me. It might not be for everybody, but the people that it is for, I will change their lives. And this was also at the peak of the like Jillian Michaels Biggest Loser era, where I was like really, 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 really proud to be on the other end of the spectrum as what that show represented. And what I mean by that is like it's not about abuse and starvation. It's about love and understanding and developing a healthy relationship with the things that you're out of line with. And that was again 18 years ago. And to say that what we do now has evolved from that place in ways that's almost like ahead of its times. And yeah,
Totally. Totally. Well, okay, so you are really good at like
really good at what?
uh puzzles.
Yeah, I love puzzles.
Like especially the little ones that you have to like move the pieces around to get it all to get the picture to map up, but it's all within one containment, like one little contained system.
Uh,
And I really think about you. You and I have such different minds, and I really deeply respect your mind and the way that it works. Um, and with this emphasis and focus that you've been sharing about since the beginning of excellence, um, combined with your insight into people who seem to have everything but still have a tremendous emptiness in their lives, and dysfunction and loneliness, and so many different factors that are really heartbreaking when you realize that people have dedicated their lives and potentially stepped on a lot of other people in the process to get to a place that they thought would bring them fulfillment and happiness, and it doesn't. Um, I'm curious about I'm curious to hear your thoughts more about like the work that we're doing now and the emphasis that we have now, especially as we're putting the finishing touches on the edge, which for anybody who doesn't know is a course that we've co-created over the course of like 5 years together, since Seth began his sexology training, where we're like, how can we really help people in the nervous system, somatic healing, their sexuality, and the larger systemic patterns that we're all carrying with us, that we're perpetuating. And how can we help people at the most effective point of internal transformation, really be able to work with that part of themselves in a way that helps create systemic change long term in the world. That's like really what motivates us with the edge. And I'm curious about your like puzzle brain and the process of kind of coming to your understanding of the role of sexuality, and trauma responses and their connection with one another in
yeah.
kind of consistently seeing patterns in the people that you're working with, as well as the interviews that you've done in the last couple of years since you became a certified sexologist to really continue your research.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that just ties to what we were talking about before of just like being in the homes of the ultra high net worth to find out that they're just like unhappy and disconnected and yada, yada, yada. Um, and what I was saying before of like, people talk about the bartender or the hairdresser getting the dirtiest secrets while the trainer in somebody's home, 2, 4 times a week gets all the biggest dirt. So that was kind of what the evolution was, being a strength and conditioning coach, working with professional athletes, morphing that into my own in-home training business. Uh, Purely based on location, I was able to drop into Palm Beach Island clientele. And to what you're saying, and then again, like I evolved from a strength and conditioning coach. I layered that with my yoga, meditation, life coaching, layered that with interspiritual seminary, and then finally with the sexology, tantra education. But the core theme and what you're getting at here is at some point, people would feel safe enough to open up to me about their sex lives or lack thereof. And it didn't matter who you were on the scale of finances, on the scale of anything. Everybody, once they finally opened up to me, had some form of dysregulated sex drive, whether the hypo aroused or the religiously shamed or the sex addict. And there's many sweet conservative people with the deepest, dirtiest shadows. And Ganga's making a face because she knows stories. And that, hey, we could do a whole sit around the fire and hear some wild stories because I have them. But it really sparked something in me of like, there's a thread here. And again, that puzzle part of my brain that you're talking about led me to the work of Sigmund Freud and Carl Jung, at a very young age, and I wanted to understand the layers of our psyche. I wanted to understand how shadows became to be, and how what we suppress affects us, and every dimension of life. And I already talked about like persona and ego. We get into all that, but I started to really realize there was like a thread here of dysregulated sexual energy, for lack of a better word, and including in myself. Because to be very clear, and I know I don't write about this as much as I could, but in my 20s and 30s, as I was in like a very intentional, going to grow my career, going to grow my business, going to educate myself, and be successful. At the same time, I was like a decade long fuckboy. I felt like I did it with integrity, if that's possible. And Ganga knows all this. But, I had like my Tinder days and, using my intellect for manipulation. I wouldn't have seen it at the time that way. But like, I'm not looking for a relationship. I'm looking to grow my career, whatever. But I had dysregulated sexual energy, and I was seeking validation outside of myself from other people's, mixed in with just like exploring and having a good time. So it's integral in a lot of ways, but realizing that every individual has some form of either like hyper aroused or hypo aroused response. A lot of the time, it's like a swinging of the pendulum without even realizing it. Like a hyper response of like going out, maybe having some hookups or what have you, and then like the shame and the guilt that comes with that, and then it just becomes this like really distorted polarity. And I started to realize, as I started putting the puzzle together, that distorted polarity is literally what's affecting our entire world.
Yeah.
Politics, patriarchy, the systems that we're living in are all dictated by unconscious dysregulated sexual energy, period. Then layering that with our trauma informed seminary, and really realizing that like we are all swimming in the same cultural waters of traumatization. And in the work that we do, Ganga and I at Amun Academy define, or we talk about trauma as any event, emotional experience that's too much, too fast, or too soon for our nervous systems to metabolize or process, or anything that's not enough for too long. So when you work with those definitions, you start to realize that pretty much life itself is traumatizing. And that might sound dramatic, but it's radically true. And a non woo woo way that I love to talk about. Yeah, kind of.
I will just say specifically in the systems that we're living in, like, I was thinking about this morning of how somebody can go through something that for another person lives on in their body as a trauma, but if they stay connected, if they're connected with someone and they're able to process and metabolize what's going on, then it doesn't actually live on in their bodies as a trauma. It doesn't register. That's why like each one of us can have a completely different experience of the same shared experience with family members or siblings or people in childhood, because there there's so much about there's so much that it could be different. Like I don't want to say that like life is traumatizing. I would say that the systems that we're living within perpetuate and create cycles of trauma inherently, the way that they are designed. And I believe deeply and that it does not have to be this way. And that we can have people's needs fulfilled. We can move at the pace of our nervous systems. We can structure our lives to be um, for presence and for connection and for integrity and for the boundaries that make life make sense for each one of us. But in the world that we're living in with the incentive structures that we live with, it takes a lot of it takes courage, and I would say it also takes privilege, and it takes a lot of uh, a lot of effort to construct a life and to create those boundaries that shift that dynamic. But I feel like there's like influential people in the world of trauma that make statements that really turn people off about kind of the universality of trauma because they they present it as a way that, first of all, I feel like make people feel guilty and heavy, and like it's all on them, and also that like it's that like trauma is the reason for all of these issues, and that there's nothing that they can do about it. And
Oh,
we're
yeah.
about taking a fundamentally different approach or
No,
dynamic.
we're here to say that you, anyone listening to this, can do something about it, and it starts within, and it starts with ourselves. And yeah, is there anything like a direction you want to move into, Ganga?
Yeah, yeah. Well, so and I excuse me for blowing my nose. I'm battling a little bit of a cold, but I yeah. Well, I want to dig a little bit deeper into this piece of working with our sexual energy as a core point of trauma resolution. Like we're living in this time where um a lot of people have some like kind of foundational understanding of trauma in the nervous system. Not everybody, but a lot of people in the spaces that we're moving through. Um Better or worse, I think that there are a lot of misconceptions out there that can be disorienting for people, and there's kind of a continuous process of discernment that all of us need to exercise with the information that we're taking in, and especially with like influencers, shaping our understandings of things in some ways that can be somewhat incomplete. Um, but I mean, there's like the obvious element of shame, that is, of course, a factor in, and like the taboo nature of talking about sex and
Well,
sexuality. But yeah, go ahead.
well, you mentioned the interviews that I did, and two
Yep.
summers ago, I had the goal of interviewing 100 people. It was right when I became a sexologist, and was just like so excited to talk to people and hear people's experiences. And we didn't reach 100, but there was a lot, and a lot of amazing data came out of that, including, and it's like my exercise science brain got to like compile data, and it was very clear to us that people received three kinds of sexual education. A lot of them did overlap, but the three forms of education people received were no sex education, just never talked about, kind of learn it on your own, learn on the streets. Um,
On the internet.
the internet, right? Bad sex education, which seemed to be, and I interviewed like somebody in China, multiple people in Europe, obviously a lot of people in North America, and it was like it anything anybody received from school was bad. Like literally, like as children, they even knew it was bad, and that was definitely my experience with sex education. And then the third is people who learned by being abused sexually or physically, which unfortunately is far too common in our culture. But just understanding that majority, and that's an understatement, of humans alive uh, don't have a full understanding of their own physical body and their own physiology. And that right there is like a very important piece of the puzzle when we talk about dysregulated sexual energy. And at the same time, as we talk about, like, sexual energy is life force energy. So many people these days talk about like hacking the body and all these optimize the body. And it's like, but they don't even have a full understanding of our life force energy, the essence that is us and empowers us to live our best lives. And then when we put again, just like putting the layers or the puzzle pieces together, then what I was going to say before is like the non woo woo way of just looking at trauma is understanding what Thomas Hanna coined the red light reflex, which I've written about dozens of times. And that's just the way I like to teach that is it doesn't matter where you are in the world, no matter what language you speak, if a firecracker goes off behind you, we're all going into this red light reflex, which is a protective mechanism. Um, and what happened or happens is culture, technology, society has advanced way faster than the human body has. And what when I say we're all swimming in the culture waters of trauma, what I mean is our bodies don't understand a financial hardship, a relationship hardship, or just traffic as not being a need to go into that red light reflex and unconsciously in a lot of cases. And from my experience, so many people who are like, "Oh, my shoulder's round. I'm at my desk. I'm at my phone too much." It's like, no, you don't realize you're living in a constant bracing for protection. Again, this is our body's intelligence keeping us alive, but at a certain point, it doesn't serve our greater good. So, and this all directly ties into our sexual energy and the lack of depth of knowledge we have about our own bodies, our own sexual essence, our vitality, and we start to understand excuse me, that chronic red light reflex that is truly like why most people don't realize that they're in a constant state of brace to some level. And I invite anybody listening now, take a moment, take a few breaths. Yeah, Ganga. Notice if your jaw feels a little tight, if your shoulders feel a little tight. See where you're fighting gravity and see if you could yield a little deeper, right? We don't even realize for survival, let alone when like the political and economic landscape of the world today, we don't even realize how much tension, how much bracing is all happening. And to your point before, like the way we could heal this systemically has to start within. And that's why, as you know, we call our work personal development for collective evolution. And we truly believe that. So to understand how trauma works, how red light reflex works, how that affects our mind and our bodies. And then we put the other puzzle piece of trauma responses, and we talk about fight, flight, freeze. And then not enough people are talking about fawn and fornicate. We start to realize that what we think of are our personalities are actually just dysregulated trauma response manifesting as what we think who we are. And then we put the layers of depth psychology on top of that, we start to realize like, oh my God, this thing that happened to me as a child that, I don't think matters anymore has literally shaped every decision I've made in my life up to this point. And that the reason we get caught up in the same patterns, and again, ties into like everything you said. It's like you could lose the weight, right? And still be miserable. You could do all these things, but unless you're working truly holistically, and I don't say holistically as like a buzzword, I mean like truly in every dimension of your life, we're not going to get the full transformations that we're looking for. And I could go on and on about sexual energy vitality if you want me to go deeper, but
Well, no, well, and I think that, to that point, like, I think when you say, like, working on every single dimension of your life, it can sound overwhelming and, like, it's like, "Oh, I've gotta, do this and this and this and that," like, like a full menu of, like, of different things that you now feel obligated to
but
do, and
that
that
but that's like the fitness social media culture.
yeah, yeah,
The
yeah.
reality is when you work multidimensionally, it's actually like slower, steadily, more integral and accessible.
Yeah, it's so simple, and what we've found, I've been thinking about lately how when I first started really deeply studying systems theory, sometimes some systems theory concepts would be, like, mentioned at in the example of, like, of, like, the body. Like, the idea of, like, flux equilibrium would be taught, and, like, the feedback loops of the body of, like, "Oh, if your body's too cold, you will get shivers," and talk about, like, homeostasis of body temperature. But nothing that I read actually gave a really grounded, effective, um, introduction to how the body is a full living system and talk about every single one of living system principles from the lens of the body, and instead it was like talking about like much larger systems levels of thinking about things from ecosystems to civilizations to different things like that. I'm like, okay, but everybody studying this and everybody who might ever be interested in this has a body, and if we can connect with our body as the the ground of intersection of all of these other forces that we're interacting with, and it's the one thing that we always have the most autonomy and sovereignty and agency around. Like, I might not be able to affect change in external circumstances, but I can affect my breath. I can work with my nervous system. And so as you and I have both studied the nervous system and understood that, we're like, oh, this is the point of intersection. This is the ground through which all other dimensions of life can be
It
worked.
has to. There's only going to be effective change when it starts from.
Yeah. And I think that like there's a level of education that we, give in the edge. And I saw Akeshi in here and
Oh, if you're still here, I can't wait to see you Thursday.
yeah, some beautiful people who are moving through the edge, and I'm so excited and curious. The feedback that we have been receiving has been really cool and really insightful. Dreams that people are having and breakthroughs that they're having with their sexual energy, with their relationships, or in their solo personal practice, which is where we encourage you to begin with. Um, and we try to balance everything that we do with education that stimulates the mind, that gives information. And for us, that's a critical piece of being trauma informed. For us, like our Seth and I both, like, part of our coping mechanisms are intellectualization and really wanting to understand things.
Well, we do. We're the kinds of people that's like, I've had ex girlfriends like want to break up with me over this, and Gang is like, do this. And it's like before we watch a movie, we're like, we want to know who wrote it, who directed it, who produced it, how did they intersect in the past before? Like,
What was the cultural impact that they were going for? Like,
yeah,
we always try to parse that as much as we can through our own, yeah.
truly, yeah.
So we try to bring forward good education, and then we move into embodiment, and then we move into empowerment, and
And
yeah.
well, I would just like to say, and I literally said this to you last night, like I'm a firm believer that when we understand something intellectually, we get to drop deeper into our bodies. Like when we know the how and the why something works, it lets us drop into it deeper. So I'm sorry.
No, I've experienced that. I've experienced that, like, with different healing modalities. Like if I go to an acupuncturist and they're just like, I tell them what's going on with me, they put the needles in, and I ask them questions and they don't really engage and answer, I feel like I don't have that as much of a receptive, positive experience. But we have a very good friend of ours, he's our acupuncturist, and every time he's about to put the needles in, I'll ask him any questions that I have about, like, what is the system that we're working with right now? What are the meridians? Like, what is it that's going on? And then I can direct my mind and I trust what's happening as well better. And I just feel like there's so many people who teach, like even very famous like public tantra educators that I'm aware of, that I some of whom I've met personally, and I respect on a personal level, but like they don't even present like where the lineage is coming from, or like they don't it's like they just want to deliver the biggest experience. And I think that this happens in spiritual spaces and transformative spaces
Well,
all the
just
time.
so much of it is performative at the same
Yeah.
time.
Yeah, it's like, how can I deliver, like, the most explosive experience possible that blows someone out of their body and has them really have an intense experience that then makes them wanna come back for more, instead of how can I really empower people to hold the patterns of what is actually happening within their system, have discernment and empowerment to apply it to their lives effectively, uh like, let it be in their hands, because you give them, like, actually everything that they
Well,
need. I
yeah.
think that that's, like, not a financial model that a lot of people are willing to, like.
Well, this is like full circle to me saying like I've left a lot of money on the table because I haven't been like dogmatic or rigid.
Yeah,
But I have
or
always been connected to my ethics and
posturing
integrity.
for market's sake,
Right,
yeah.
right, right, right. Totally, totally. And then again, just everything we're building is designed to educate, allow people to embody it, to feel it, right? Like you need to feel something in your body. And then from there to empower them to, make it their own. So much of the feedback we've gotten with the Edge and some of our other courses at Amuna is, and it's like the best compliment, but it feels familiar. It feels like it's information people already know, but at the same time, it feels radically brand new and so needed in the world.
Yeah.
And we've intentionally designed it that way. And that's even like when I first got serious about my Buddhist studies, I remember like reading books and being like, somebody else feels the same way I feel, then there's language for it. That's amazing. And so much of what the edge is just reminding people of who they are and how they came to be and empowering them to develop a new relationship with pleasure. And from that new education and embodiment, you're then empowered to go and live truly your best life. And I know I keep saying this, but everybody wants to change the world. Everybody wants to go and march the streets and yada yada, but nobody wants to put the miner's hat on, put the light on, and go down into their own shadows, into their own caves, and take the tangled threads and knots that is their past and loosen them up to make more sense. And until we all do that collectively, we're going to be continuously swimming in the same
Yeah.
circle.
Yeah, well, and I found it so gratifying on like a multiple choice options that I put into when we did the reality reorientation experiment. The most consistent response that people selected to this one question that I had was that they understand that there are larger patterns, systemic patterns of what's going wrong in this world, and that those patterns live in them, and that they want to address where that lives within them. And I think that people, like, this is the thing, is that, like, we believe that people are smart enough to understand this, that there are people who are looking for this kind of work, um, and that there are not enough people guiding and teaching and leading in this way. And we're so honored to have found ourselves in the position to be doing that with a lot of care and commitment to integrity along the way. And I'm kind of curious as we kind of wrap up here. And again, if anyone here has questions, feel welcome to put them in the chat. We're going to wrap up in about 10 minutes. But I'm curious, like, in the world, in your imagination, our imagination, Seth, um, where like a critical mass of people, right? Like Erica Chenoweth has written about how like 3.5% of the population is what's needed to make critical mass to make real powerful change in fighting authoritarianism and all kinds of stuff. So if we were to imagine like a critical mass of 3.5% of the population of America, for example, who understood and what we teach in the edge, and who had a healthy relationship with their sexuality, with their nervous system, that they knew how to work with that energy in a way that is not only healthy and effective and pleasurable, but also able to be a source of healing of the past, which is something that we teach at for, which we just released this week, as well as helping them to have greater agency and directing their energy toward what the future can be for themselves and for the collective. If we lived in a world where a critical mass of people were able to operate that way, uh, able to really integrate these principles into their bodies and feel empowered in the way that they move through the world, what would that world look like?
Yeah, that's a big question. And well, in a lot of I was just thinking it's almost like in that world we could all of the nonsense, so much of like the political issues, like so much social political issues that bog the system down, that means real change can't happen. So much of that can be skimmed from the top. And I was talking to somebody this weekend who's a survival of childhood sexual abuse, and we were talking about the edge, and they were like, "Oh, I've like spoken at conferences for people who have suffered similar to me, and nobody's actually addressing like the root of what's causing this to happen. This is the first thing I've ever heard that actually addresses the root." So again, I'm a firm believer that a majority of people's lives are controlled, whether it's consciously or unconsciously, by their unprocessed, sexual shadows, integration, however you want to call it. So living in a world where people are able to authentically align and connect with their own sexuality, uh again, just so much harm that so much unnecessary harm, self-inflicted and afflicted on others, dissolves.
Yeah.
And that's just like one angle of this world. We're talking about a world where your 3.5% of the people's sexual needs and desires are met. 3.5% of the world where people are cleaning up past events that have caused them to be the way they are. We love to say we cannot change the past, but we can absolutely change how the past lives in our bodies today. And we do that through the nervous system and the neuro work that we do through connecting to our sexual pleasure. And from that place, from changing how our body reacts in the present, just changes everything about the futures we all get to live. And when more and more people are living from that place, we believe that big shifts can happen.
Absolutely. And and like it's interesting, you and I both talk about this from an intergenerational perspective as well. And being being parents, we started talking about this intergenerationally before we were parents, of just like healing and cleaning up past ancestral trauma that we've inherited, and just like creating a different pattern for the future generations that are coming in to come after us. But being parents of a child as well, just brings it home even more so, just the necessity of doing this work, and understanding how yeah, there's just that's a whole world that we could talk about further.
Well, yeah,
But just
I
it just so vitally important that we, in this generation, in this time that we're living in, with the horrible shit that we're facing in this moment of crisis as a species, that we really commit to creating better and different patterns, because I am a firm believer that there is life in the future. There is a future with life on Earth, and we are, right now, who are alive, are shaping what that looks like. And it really matters where we put our time and our energy and our attention, and our money and our, like, all of our resources into really creating a better pattern for the future life forms on this planet to inherit.
I think a great way to end. Well, two things are coming up that might be a great kind of bow to put on this talk, and we look forward to more and more people joining us in these talks. But two things coming up for me is, one, like, I did a lot of inner child work and reparenting before becoming a parent. But then as soon as you become a parent, it really magnifies that work, and that's again a whole other subset conversation. But obviously, in the most beautiful ways when you're an aware parent, just to put it that way. And then the final kind of thought is, few years ago, I was at a men's weekend, and there was one older man there amongst most like 20 and 30 somethings. I would say like a 60-year-old man, and sweet, kind man, very into and open to everything happening over the weekend. And then the final share, he was like, well, and I don't agree with him, but he said, well, it's too late for me, but I know that my grandchildren will not have to make all the mistakes, and they'll make their own mistakes, but they're going to be starting from my shoulders. And that's how I feel about life. I feel like my grandparents immigrated here, and then my father, my mother were able to start on a higher platform, and then I get to do that as well. And I also believe that when people are living with awareness and intention, that that platform that the next generation is starting from is exponential, and that's how we're going to make really big changes. But as you know, there aren't a lot of great role models for children today, and that's a whole other conversation.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, this is awesome. I feel like we've touched on places that we haven't fully gone into, just in private together. And I'm so grateful. Thank you all for joining us on this live. We're going to wrap up in a minute. I do want to just let you all know that the next office hours that we have privately within Amuna for our students and our members and our clients is the first week in December. I will be going live in there on Tuesday. Seth will be on Thursday, December 4th. So December 2nd and 4th, respectively. And in those spaces, obviously, it's not a live stream. It's a room where we can have face-to-face conversations with whoever shows up. It's often very, very intimate. And we can really dig into some direct support and really deep conversations about whatever it may be that's coming up. If you're interested in the Edge, we will make sure that that's posted in the replay for this, so it's easy for people to touch and access. We have been very quietly launching the Edge for a little while. We're going to be sharing much more about it in the future. Um, and yeah, if there's any questions or thoughts that have sparked for you in watching this, either live or in the replay, please write them as comments. Please reach out to us. We love hearing from people. We really want to create a space of personal development for collective evolution that's truly relational and that we could really connect with everyone, especially in these early days of growing. And we're figuring out what forms of marketing feel most authentic and and accurate for like an integrity for us. And so, yeah, hearing feedback from you, hearing what resonates, what thoughts are sparked from you is really helpful for us.
We can't emphasize enough. We want to be in conversation. We want to be in relationship. This is non-hierarchical. Everybody has something beautiful and valuable to bring to the conversation. We're firm believers that we are each other's medicine, and the more people joining, the more pieces we have for one another. And genuinely, Ganga and I wish we could invite everybody over to our house for meals. It's our favorite thing to do, and doing these little Substack lives and as well as our office hours and really just everything we're creating is just like our way of doing that in a digital world. And we look forward to getting to know you.
All right. Thank you so much, Seth, and thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Ganga. Thank you, everyone, for joining us.
Beautiful.